stopped. Stravinsky wrote Histoire du Soldat for a sparse, shock-maned chamber ensemble. It turned out to be his best score, the only convincing surrealist manifesto. Its convulsive, dreamlike compulsion, imparting to music an inkling of negative truth. The precondition of the piece was poverty. It dismantled official culture so drastically because, denied access to the latter's material goods, it also escaped the ostentation that is inimical to culture. There is here a pointer for intellectual production after the present war, which has left behind in Europe a measure of destruction undreamt of by even the voids in that music. Progress and barbarism are today so matted together in mass culture that only barbaric asceticism towards the latter and towards progress in technical means could restore an unbarbaric condition. You know, it's dense stuff that needs unpacking, and people have written commentaries on. Adorno was also a great music theorist and wrote about music. And his the most important quote from this book, which I have quoted before, is that the only valid standpoint for philosophers nowadays is the standpoint towards enlightenment. Let me repeat. It's the last section, the finale. The only philosophy which can be responsibly practiced in face of despair is to contemplate all things as they would present themselves from the standpoint of redemption. Knowledge has no light but that shed on the world by redemption. All else is reconstruction, mere technique. I treasure that paragraph, and, I think it's immensely true now, as much as it was when he wrote this book. And he was Jewish, and so to study things from the standpoint of redemption, after the Holocaust, after World War II, which he's writing about retrospectively, he's saying, we really have to get our act together as philosophers and thinkers. I don't care if you're Jewish or Christian or Muslim or, whatever. Look, let's look at all this together from the standpoint of redemption. Now, I would say that's even truer now in our era of mass catastrophes, mass threats to planetary survival. We have the global pandemic. We have the fires burning, global warming. We have the pandemic of lies. We have deceitful politicians running countries. We have, et cetera, et cetera. I can go on. How are we going to solve it? What can ethics shed light on this from? Well, it has to be by practicing philosophy from the standpoint of redemption. We have to ask, what can we do as philosophers and thinkers to transform this situation for the benefit of everyone? Not just some little clique or some little group or some little religion that we believe in or that we're culturally born into, but no, planetary-wide. That's why I've set up this thing called WMASC, the World Messiahship, Avatar and Seishant Council. And it's a project I'm doing with the World Intellectual Forum. It's very Adorno-ish. I'm saying, let the thinkers on the planet now that are flourishing, who are aware of this, the seriousness and gravity of the situation, come together. It's not a time for each promoting our own little sect or even our own little religion or big religion. This is a time for coming together to solve our global problems as intellectuals, as philosophers, conjointly, each sharing what we've discovered from our own, everyone's intellectual history is different. So what have we discovered from our journey through? How can we share that with humanity as a whole? That's the mission of the Global Green University as well. How can that be then inform our higher education in, like University of Oxford, London, Cambridge, Paris, Vienna, wherever, the great universities of the world. We need to be working together. I sat on a committee of university presidents, which used to meet in the UN, looking at how universities are developing peace studies or not. I would like to see a peace studies department in every university worldwide before I die. So let's get on with it and look at things from the standpoint of redemption. Okay, now my last little thing. I want to share one final thing and do one last reading, which is this book. This book I published, I think, last year, The Ethical Calculus, a method for solving complex ethical decisions. So as a philosopher of, among other things, ethics, I've thought up a system which enables people to draw on the wisdom of all the great philosophical traditions of mankind, the religious philosophies and so on, and then have an actual way of computing mathematically difficult choices between option X or option Y. We're all faced with huge ethical choices. Should I have the vaccine? Shouldn't I? Okay, here's a way of working out the ethics of that. And I'm going to just read a couple of passages from it. I'm not going to share the whole thing. It's it's complicated. It is the contention of this book that even complex ethical choices can be boiled down to the fundamental question: which of these choices, A, B, or C, or D, E, will bring greater happiness to both myself and to my friends, and to all persons globally. It is our contention that the formulae given in this book can, once having been understood and practiced a few times, be used to shed light on how we should act in even the most difficult, dangerous, and complex of situations. In this work, I've tried to sum up a lifetime of study and teaching into ethics in a few short stages, much as a driving instructor might give a series of lessons to a new beginner who wants to learn how to master the art of driving. Many theorists of philosophy do not write how-to manuals in everyday language, but prefer to write complex and dense philosophical treatises in which ethical matters are given long and convoluted expositions. I too have undertaken such a work. It is called Being and Knowledge. And for anyone who wants to delve into the details of all the points made in this introduction, they'd be well to consult that larger work, which is thousands of pages long. It goes into the ethical theories of all the major and some minor philosophical and religious traditions on the planet. Here, I'm only going to be summarising the briefest samples of that larger work's finding and explaining them in such a way that they can be instantly drawn on for use in the actual practice of complex ethical decision-making. So that's the point of the book, which is short. It's only like about 100 pages, whereas Being and Knowledge is like thousands of pages long, and most people won't have time to read that. But this is one you can have in your backpack, you can have in your night bag, and you can use when you're faced with an ethical problem or an immediate choice. Okay, so that's that's what I wanted to share. I've been talking about ethics and philosophy. I hope you've enjoyed this. I'm going to finish finally with just a couple more questions from the book I started out with, Philosophiae Religionis, Principia Mathematica. Here's a couple more questions about ethics. Imagine you've been tasked by the Sanhedrin in 30 AD to set up an advanced academy of religious studies in Jerusalem and to hire Jesus of Nazareth as a teacher of spiritual ethics. Who else would you hire for the academy? What courses would it run? Imagine you found the lost notes of Aristotle's lectures on religions, in which he outlines the known ethical systems of the different religions of the world as existing in his day. Sketch out the contents of the lectures he gave at the Lyceum. Write a dialogue between a Zoroastrian, a Manichaean, a Platonist, and a Christian on the virtues. Identify a set of virtues for each Sephiroth of the Kabbalistic tree of life. Which virtues go with which? Research all the philosophers and religious thinkers who've tried to develop a quantified calculus for determining ethical actions. Have they succeeded? And I'm going to finish with a quote from a poet, because we're in the room of literature. And this is from Wallace Stevens. "The good man has no shape.